Right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, and entertainment. Nick Durst here along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, I'm very excited for our guest today. It's harder to lock him down than it is to get into Fort Knox, but we finally got him on the podcast. And you could let everybody know who we have with us here today.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We've gotten to know a lot of people in the fantasy sports betting sector, sphere. Somebody who's done that for a really long time in multiple capacities as a writer, as a host. He's landed at places like ESPN before. He's written for the Wall Street Journal, most recently for The Athletic and Cup of Coffee, hosting shows for our company now, the Bettor Sports Network. So we're happy to have him on. And yes, we're able to pin him down. Nando.
Sorry, guys. I'm sorry about that.
How are you, Nando?
Got a lot going on. Everything's great. How are you?
We're doing well.
Can't complain.
Right. Great, man. Awesome.
Now that we got you on the podcast, we're going to a whole new level. So we're very excited. Hopefully this puts us over the top. As our viewers know, we were nominated for the best sports business podcast by the Sports Pod Group, going against some heavy hitters from your company, The Athletic, as well as the New York Post and whatnot. So we're definitely going to get clobbered in there, but it's the nomination that counts. So
groundswell. Get a groundswell, man. You'll be fine.
Well, we'll see. So you, of course, spend a lot of weekends in Staten Island, New York, which is where we are both from. And that's because your wife is from Staten Island. So curious, as somebody who never really frequented Staten Island beforehand, how you and your wife met and how you got integrated with the Staten Island culture over the years.
Well, we met. I was working at Court TV at the time, and someone came over from. She was working at CNN. Someone came over from CNN, and it wasn't even me. It wasn't even her, actually. It was a dude I worked with. He's like, "Oh, you'd really like her friend, JJ." I'm like, "All right, cool. Introduce." And so her friend did, and that was basically it. Like, we hit it off, went on a couple dates. Staten Island, my Staten Island experience is interesting because we don't do much, with like old fashioned Italians. So it's basically dinner. Go to the house, Sunday dinner. Like on the way, I hit Manor Bagels. I get some of the bagels. We got Donut World, get some of the donuts. They're all in that little area there. Like, so yeah, I could Manor. I don't know if you guys know Manor Bagels at all, but like it is my favorite place in the world. Love it.
Nick, we got to take Nando around on Staten Island one day to eat elsewhere because restaurants and the places to get Italian food on Staten Island, believe it or not, very good. Some of the best places in and around the tri-state area. So what Staten Island does very, very well, for sure, is food.
Chris Vaccaro would not shut up about Lee's Tavern forever.
I recently.
Nick has never been to Lee's Tavern. He's not a real Staten Island guy. You got to be good. You got to go to Lee's.
Yeah, Nick, seriously, man, come on. Buy the sneakers. I bought him a pair of the sneakers for his birthday.
And the other move that people usually make,
which Joe did not spoil on air. Thank you.
Well, we won't do that. But the other move that people usually make is because Ralph's is super popular, and because this restaurant, Danino's, is they're right down the block from each other in Port Richmond. That's another move that people make. So. A lot of Staten Islanders. Yeah, no, I agree. Ralph's is overpriced. Lee's is like a typical bar pie, so it's good. But we got to take Nick there one day, and if you ever have the opportunity to hit up Danino's, it's pretty solid.
All right, I'm in.
All right, there you go.
Thank you, pal. So you attended Boston College, studying history. Now, unfortunately, all my really great friends went to school right down Commonwealth Avenue. They went to BU.
Nice. Awesome.
Big time rivals. But talk about attending BC.
It was cool, man. Like I grew up in Syracuse, and so like BC was always like a Big East rival. They weren't like Georgetown or St. John's or anything, but they were kind of like a mini rival. So it was kind of rough. Like I think my first year at BC was Donovan McNabb's senior year. And I mean, you grow up, 16, 17, well, I guess 15, 16, 17 years old, cheering for Donovan McNabb in college, like running the triple option. It was very hard for me to switch loyalties like that, like to all of a sudden cheer for Boston College. So that was a tough freshman year for me sports wise. I didn't care about hockey. but like, you know, like our hockey team was amazing when we were winning championships at the time. So yeah, it was an odd, I mean, I had a blast. I loved it, but it was kind of odd, like from the angle of like switching loyalties just because I go to this school now. By the time I left, you know, you get classes with a lot of these guys, like, oh, you're really cool. I like you, you know, like whatever. So it was easier as it went along, but like right out of the gate, like BCSU was like right before Halloween. And I'm kind of like, what am I gonna like? I'm just gonna stand here, not say it or do anything. I'm just gonna watch. And so, you know, but it was fun. I liked it. It was cool. We had a lot of scandal at BC when I was there, though. Like two separate big things. Such is life.
Such as life. Nick always asks this question, so I got to ask. We have a lot of people, communications people, journalism people, media people on. They attend Syracuse. So they go from likely being in an area that's warmer to an area that's brisk and unbelievably cold. So what was it like growing up there?
Oh man, I loved it. I wouldn't exchange it for like the snow, whatever. Like, you know, like you build some character. I was like, I'm an amazing, like right now when it snows, I'll shovel the entire block and not, you know, like break a sweat. Like, I just love it. I don't know if it reminds me of my childhood or what, but I just like, are you gonna get a snow plow, you know, if you're driving? Like, no, man, I'm gonna shovel it. Like, of course, like, what do you mean? I'm like a snow plow. And you know, the summers are really like hugely underrated, beautiful. Like nice and hot during the day, you know, clear sunny skies. And then at night, like the temperature dips down to like, you know, maybe sometimes the 50s or 60s and, you know, open window kind of weather. You know, you just get a lot of snow, but like snow's fun, man. Like, would you rather just have it like be 40 and like rainy, or do you want snow? The plows come out immediately like that. Like they're so used to it, they just come out like that. So the roads are fine. Like you're rarely finding a day in Syracuse where you can't drive on the roads. So I don't know, man.
No school
closures,
closures growing up, right? 8 feet of snow, go to school. They clear the road.
We had some of those. We had the 2 hour delay. But yeah, like it was, you know, a normal place would close school with like 4 inches. And we're like 1.5 feet. Like, no, come to school, man. What are you thinking? So it happens. But it did. We got some days off. It wasn't so bad.
Just like the movie Snow Day, right? You ever see it?
And I was from Syracuse. That took place in
Yeah,
Syracuse.
that's what I'm saying.
And apparently they remade it, which I didn't know. I don't know why you would remake Snow Day, but they did.
I don't know. It's terrible. They remake everything though now.
It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. So going from BC, get your master's closer to Nick and I at Fordham. So how was that?
Yeah.
That like?
Fordham was great, man. Like I love it. Like it was, you know, I was working at the time, and so, you know, at work, I'd go to school, work, go to school, work, go to school. But like it was a good program. It was good. I mean, like, you know, Fordham's great. I was Rose Hill up in the Bronx, so I would hit up a lot of the restaurants there, a couple of the bars, you know, I'd go to. And so it's a 2-year program. The second year, my brother started Fordham as an undergrad, so I got to hang out with him a bunch, and, you know, we'd go do some things. You know, it was nice. So yeah, I liked Fordham a lot. Fordham, I almost went to undergrad. So I guess that was my missed opportunity I made up for grad school wise.
So undergrad and grad school, you're a history major studying history. So what kind of career path were you looking to go down? And initially, when you first started working there, what kind of jobs were you doing?
So I was going to go be a lawyer, actually. I was going to do, I think like towards the end. So, you know, everyone goes to college, like, I'm going to be a doctor. So I was a bio major for my first year at BC. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be a doctor. I didn't like the guy, like, I don't know, just didn't feel it. So I switched to history because I was really good at history. And like, you know, like I was a good writer and stuff, but like I didn't, you know, why would that be your major if you're already good at it? So anyway, I liked history a lot. I like the research angle of it. So I was doing a lot of research assistant jobs, which I guess drew into like the bio thing too. Like I just like researching, like digging things up. And like I used to love going to like the library and just like pounding out these books and making copies of crazy stuff that, like, you know, my thesis was on the history of Armenian immigration. Like stuff like that, like, you know, why things play out the way they do and how you get set on a course that, you know, was just a matter of circumstance for like 2 years. Anyway, I don't know. That's really intriguing to me. So I was looking at, you know, research assistant jobs. And I like the first job I got was Fantasyland. It was a research assistant for Fantasyland. But when I was in BC, I was a research assistant on a book about there were these professors who were the guys who figured out that Dracula was really based on Vlad the Impaler. You know, and so like they did another book that was called like In Search of Jekyll and Hyde, where they tried to trace the inspiration for Jekyll and Hyde to this guy named Deacon Brodie in Scotland. And so I was a research assistant on that book. And then I'm like, this is really awesome. Like the research assisting, and then like the book stuff was fun. So I kind of fell into that path, which was really, I thought very cool, I thought. But yeah, I ditched my lawyer dreams. Man, I can't, like, I think right before I went to Fordham, and like, screw it, man. Yeah, I'm gonna do research. I'm gonna get that history master's and like roll with that. Maybe I'll be a teacher. We'll see, do some books on the side, stuff like that. That's, that was a cool path. So yeah, every like 2 or 3 years, I'd be like, there was this program at Bryn Mawr College that you could finish your bio degree in like a year and a half, and then take your MCATs and go to. And I was still like, maybe I should do it. And always something would just always happen. I'm like, nah, not gonna happen.
So you mentioned Dracula, new Dracula movie coming out with Nicolas Cage, which looks horrifying. But you're a big history guy. I'm a big history guy as well. We got a big historical event coming up here in a few weeks. We're recording this in April, but it's going to happen in May. The coronation, the British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire here. Are you going to be keeping an eye on this at all? Do you care about the royals at all whatsoever?
No, I think it'll be cool. Like, so I bought the top set of the royal wedding when that happened.
Oh wow!
And then I mean, like, I like the commemorative stuff. I don't think I'm gonna be. You know what it is, Nick and Joe, is that people like make such a big deal out of it now that I'm just like, I'm sick of it by the time it rolls around. Like everyone's talking who know nothing about it. Like when the Kentucky Derby comes around, everyone's a horse expert. Like it's just like. It's just so annoying that everyone's such an expert, and I'm so into the royal family. Like by the time it comes, like you have no idea or any sense of this history. So I'm just sick of it, and just as a personal protest, I'll probably stay away from it and read about it later. I guess
we'll try to stay away from it, but it's going to be at every network most likely. You'll have.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like like people who shouldn't be talking about
Hoda. I mean, they're going to be like as if they're so involved. All these newscasters. It's going to be. But I want to see if maybe there is a new top set that's going to come out from this.
I wouldn't be surprised. Leaf will do it. Leaf's been doing a lot of that stuff.
All right, something to stay tuned to. So you mentioned doing the researching for the book Fantasyland, kind of really, I guess, continue to spark your interest in writing. Going into college, you liked writing. You liked the whole aspect of it. You kind of rekindled with it there. And then you continue along those lines, doing editing and writing for Talented Mr. Roto, which then led to you making some appearances on ESPN. With ESPN there, you are making appearances, writing and stuff. So we do our research as well, just like you as the research
I guess so,
expert.
Yeah.
So tell us about that time in your career there where you're kind of breaking into this fantasy space, which previously really had not been something that you would see on your TV or you'd be able to read about too much.
Yeah, exactly. At the time, it was so the book featured Matthew Berry, who I think when we started the book, this was 2004, was still at Roto World, and then he started Talented Mr. Roto. And I don't know what it was. Like I think maybe he liked the emails I wrote or something, but he's like, hey, like why don't you come write for Talented Mr. Roto? And I think I was writing for Talented Mr. Roto while we were still finishing up the book. But yeah. So like that's I hooked on with Barry, went and did Talented Mr. Roto first as a writer, and then he brought me up to like editor as a psych. I mean, I think by the time like a year later we had like 40 or 50 people writing for the site. Barry, like, it hadn't gotten bought by ESPN yet, but I had gone on ESPN for Fantasyland. Like the guy who wrote the book, Sam Walker, was going on, and he asked the producer, like, can I bring Nando one time? Like maybe, and he's like, yeah, sure. So we did it, and I guess the producer liked me, and so like, when Sam couldn't do it, I'd jump in for him and give fantasy advice, and then it just worked out well because Barry was doing it, and so they had just had another person from Talented Mr. Roto. It was cool, man. Like I never really I wasn't pursuing TV or video stuff. I don't know, whatever. At the time I was working at Court TV still, I think, for the second half of the ESPN stuff. So I was a producer, man. I was behind the scenes. Like you get to see like what people like, just like they want to be on so bad, and you're like, man, like just give it a rest, dude. On TV for 2 minutes, and that's like the crowning achievement of your life. But anyway, it just worked out well. I'd go on and give some fantasy advice. They ask questions. I was in a little room. They set me up at this place. I didn't have to go to Bristol. They set me up at this place in New York. Man, it was called like, oh man, it was like Studio 37 or something. It was just a live shots place.
Oh. Was it
You
near
go
like
in.
where they did like cold pizza and the morning shows back then? The same building?
No, it wasn't an ESPN. It was not, they rented it out basically, or like they paid, so it was a satellite live shots company basically. You go in, you'd say hi, they'd put you in this room, they'd mic you up, they'd mic check you, and like, hey, just sit here for like 15 minutes. So you just hang out and like, this is before like phones and stuff, phones, but like not like smartphones. So you just kind of stare off into nothingness. You bring a book or something and kill some time. Like, all right, you're coming up. Like, all right, you had your IFB in, and you come up, you do like 15 minutes on ESPN News, the Fantasy 350 they called it, and that was it. They tell you obviously the players ahead of time, so I could do my research, and then all right, thanks everybody, see you later. I'd walk out, I'd baby wipe my makeup off, and I'd go back to work basically. It was cool. Like, it was fun. It was kind of like a little secret mission where you'd go off and you'd be on ESPN News, and I'd tell my parents that if they were out somewhere, they make the restaurant put on the TV so they could see it and stuff. But it was cool. It was fun. So that's how that started. And then when Barry sold the site to ESPN, I'd start doing more, like I'd go up on Sundays for like the Sunday shows in the off season, which was cool. Going up there is like something else, man. It's really it's a very cool place.
So when did you start playing fantasy sports, and which fantasy sports did you like playing the best?
I started football when we were sophomores in high school. Dude quit a league that they had going for a couple of years. And this is like everyone talks about the old days where like they'd print out the results and stuff, and you had to call in your lineup on a phone. But that's what that one was. That was on the cusp of that, because I think Sandbox was starting right around then, and we jumped over to that. The next year we started a fantasy basketball league at school, like a 4-man league called the Cohocton Fantasy Basketball League, because we started on the bus ride to where our soccer team was playing in like the state final. That lasted, I was a commissioner, and it lasted a month. And I gave everyone their $10 back because it was scoring by hand, and for basketball is insane, man. Like, there's no way to do it. You can't. And then baseball, I think in college, when I was about a sophomore, we started a baseball league that was on Sandbox. But so I went over to Italy for like a month, and Sandbox, because I didn't log in, Sandbox disbanded my team. And I was just like still one of those old school dumb things they did. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's like July. We're halfway through the season. Just let the team accrue. So I just angrily didn't play fantasy baseball for another couple seasons, but picked it back up, obviously. I think my favorite's baseball. Baseball would be perfect if it was like a 60-day season. The thing, like baseball in August and September, I hate, especially fantasy baseball. And I've missed so many deadlines on like 4th of July weekend, or like when I'm hanging out with my family for Fab and stuff, that I've dropped so many leagues. Football's so easy, but it's just like football, there's no edge anymore because everyone knows anything.
Baseball's a
grind. I say baseball. Baseball's a grind, but it's so rewarding. Like, football's just like dumb fun, and I think maybe just like the feel of the fall Sundays. But I'm working every Sunday, so it's kind of like I don't have that. I can't go out and drink and have fun anymore. I mean, I can, just not on Sundays.
Do you partake in any sort of fantasy leagues that are non-sports?
No, I did. I tried Mayo's. I didn't even watch The Bachelor, but I tried Mayo's The Bachelor League a couple times and just petered out, lost interest. I think that was about it. I hadn't really. When I was at CBS, we tried to pitch Fantasy Survivor because me and Scott White watched it. We loved it. We talked about it all the time. And CBS obviously has Survivor. Yeah. No one wanted to hear it, so that didn't happen. We're like, we could write an advice column and have a game, and like, nah, no thanks. So that was that. But we were young. I don't even know if we knew how to pitch.
I always thought they should do fantasy for Big Brother on CBS, because it's in real time. You get 3 episodes a week, competitions. It's no spoilers. Where like Survivor, you could know ahead of time who won somehow. But I don't know. CBS is a little archaic when it comes to things.
Weirdly, I mean, we've made that. So many people play now, and it'll spark interest and blah blah blah. So didn't happen. Such is life.
So you mentioned Court TV. What was it like working on that type of programming for a few years?
That was awesome. I was there for 5 years, and I would probably still be there if if it didn't become like in session. And then they actually brought it back a few years ago, like in a different form. But my job was to find trials. Like, again, it was research, man. Like I was a trial tracker, and I would find trials. They split up the country 5 different ways for the 5 of us. And, I had like over here, the East Coast, a little like Jersey, Maryland, and then somehow had like Wisconsin and Minnesota. But it was just like really voracious reading and like searching. And like, this is when Google News was around. We had new Google News hits coming back at you. So, you'd have like arraigned, like all the keywords. And like, you would just read about these trials that there was this trial in like Rome, Georgia, like dusty Rome, Georgia, based on a comic book from Free Comic Book Day that some kid got that had a naked Picasso drawn in there. And like the whole case was going to be based on the lewdness of it, was based on if he was erect or if it was swinging around like in a helicopter kind of circle as he was running. And unfortunately, it didn't go to trial. We had that one all ready to go because it was like the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund was involved. All these artists were doing like auctions for charity to give like a small comic book shop that accidentally gave away this free comic in a sea, like a huge box of free comics. This one kid with this one horrible mother picked this one comic, unfortunately, instead of like the one next to it. And it just set off this series of events that they settled before. I think it was, I don't remember exactly what happened, if there was like a plea or if it was just like dismissed, but that would have been an amazing trial. But that was my job, was to find stuff like that. Like, like the big murder trials are easy. Anna Nicole Smith trial was at the time when I was there, easy to find. But like these little ones that just have this intrigue, that was my bread and butter, man. I used to find all these crazy ones and, pitch them and they'd go on TV. And I was like, that's it. That's awesome.
That's great. So you got to do dabbling in writing and editing, right? And you bounced around a little bit. So I mentioned Wall Street Journal, CBS, AOL, Mediaite, right? So what was that period of time like?
It was cool, man. I mean, it was a little dangerous because once Court TV moved to Atlanta and became like part of Turner, it was I was freelancing basically everywhere. So Wall Street Journal was cool because it was pretty regular. It was like permalance. And then I had to build stuff out, with everything else. So AOL, I'd pitch. It was just constantly like looking for stories and pitching stories and getting all over the place. For a little bit for Wall Street Journal, I was pitching, I wrote some cool pop culture stories about like New Year's glasses in 2011. How, like every other year, like the 2020 is gonna, they're the 2 zeros, and like the 1990s were like you had the zeros for the 9s. But when 2011 hit, like the 1s, that's not gonna work. You only have that 1 0. So like I did like a 2-part story on the history of the glasses and then what's going to happen in 2011 and how all these. Anyway, you just try and find cool stories and pitch them to the places where are appropriate. I did some Weight Watchers for Men writing, which was really cool at the time. They had a really good editor who was trying to it was fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was I enjoyed it because every day it was kind of like you make your own work, and like if you find something interesting, maybe there's some way you can do a story on it somewhere. If people like it, they'll do more. So I was always very cognizant. I'd hand my stuff in early. I'd make sure it's right at word count. Like you learn this stuff, I guess, along the way. Like if someone's like making about 1,200 words, you don't give them 1,600 and be like, oh, I thought you could shave it down, to your liking. You give them 1,200 and like that's, if they got questions, they'll come back with them. But yeah, it was a fun time. I was in Hoboken. I had a 1-bedroom. I actually like a studio, more like a studio.
You sound like Joe's
buddy
current day situation. He's in Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm in
Dude, it's a way to do it. Like it was fun. Like, that was my golden years, I guess. Just running through Hoboken, having a good time and trying not to spend as much money because you never know when it's gonna stop. And then writing and researching and doing that stuff during the day. It's cool. I liked it.
Yeah, got a good story. I ran out into a certain we'll say fellow employee, but really works on the carton show. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Cody Decker. Ran into each other at Texas, Arizona a couple of weeks ago during the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I was out with friends and he was just there. He was hanging out. Got to meet him in person. He was great. Nando, if you know the Bowie building, right?
All right.
I'm the building somewhere before that. So before the turn.
Were you talking about between Hoboken and Jersey City?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on the cusp. Technically, people are like, oh, no, you're Hoboken. But for technicality, we'll say I'm in Jersey City. I'm right outside the Holland Tunnel, though. Not far from your store.
Oh, it's yeah. That was my Home Depot. That's where we got our Christmas tree.
You miss it?
Uh, yeah, a little bit. I mean, a little bit. It was great. Like you'd roll out of bed, you'd have the whole city in front of you. Like, and this is like I don't know if the golden age of Hoboken, but it was like before like all the little bars got chased away and like all the, kind of like mom and pop stores became chains. Like there's no Anthropology in Hoboken. Um, it wasn't by any means like rough and tumble. It was just like there were bars like everywhere, and everywhere had like Thursday from 7 to close, $3 Coors Lights. Like it was just you could have a good time, man. It was just fun. And then the McDonald's was right there. That was the one. That was the one chain you'd hit. But like they've gotten rid of all the diners are gone. We had like 4 diners in Hoboken when I was there, and you could just 3 a.m. roll in. Yeah. There was one place that was cash only that was super annoying because then you'd have to go all the way down here to get the cash. And I don't know. It was I miss it a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of Italian delis have popped up here and there. And on Washington, there's all the big businesses that you could think of, but still with a couple of mom and pop shops. But yeah, that's what I've heard. A lot of people who were there last maybe 10, 15 years before my friends and I moved here, migrated from Staten Island. A lot of people say it's different. So they built it up very nice, though.
They said it when I was there too, though. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, you should have been here 15 years ago. I'm like, all right, dude, whatever. Like still kind of fun. Still having a good time.
You can still have a good time. Hopefully
Yeah.
you come back here one day. We could hang out.
I want to drive through. I stop at Bianca Mano's whenever I can.
Good. We'll keep in touch. Hopefully I'll be able to see you out like Cody. We'll figure out a place to go out together. Right, Nick? Is that amazing?
I don't think we're going to see the family man Nando out at a bar at Hoboken anytime soon. You're more likely to run into Daniel
I'll
Jones.
go out for like dinner or something. Don't have to be like a bar.
Yeah, Nick. Stop judging. Yeah.
Yeah, stop judging, Nick. All right, let's get moved on here. So from there, we're running the show for Anthem Sports Entertainment, launching Fantasy Network, right? So,
well, technically, I didn't launch. It was launched when I joined.
You was launched already when you joined. All right, but still, you had a little bit of experience doing everything. You did have a background in production and all that. So, explain that time too as well.
It was cool. Like I'd been in Fort Lauderdale for a couple of years and then moved back up. We actually moved to Staten Island to the in-law. We figured out.
You went from Las Olas Boulevard to Staten Island. Wow.
Let me tell you something, man. Las Olas it's Hoboken. Like when we moved there, they're like, hey, Las Olas, look at these apartments. And I'm like, I'm gonna live on the beach, man. Like, you know where I just came from? Yeah. Like Las Olas. Yeah, what am I gonna do on Las Olas? Like, live up on the restaurant.
Go to there's a good Mexican place there. That's about it. El Camino or something, I think. But yeah,
Rocco's Tacos.
I think it's overrated, Las Olas Boulevard. I'd rather be at the end by the beach over there.
That's it. Like it's cool. Like I could see the appeal if like you've lived in Fort Lauderdale your whole life and the novelty of the beach isn't right in front of you. Like why wouldn't you live on the beach? Anyway, so Fantasy Sports Network was cool. Like it was based out of Toronto. The guy who started, Len Asper, is like this incredibly nice, wonderful man who really believed in it. Like gave a lot of resources to everybody. Chris Meany was there. Pat Mayo was there. Like it was like. If you put that whole thing to get like Frank Stanfield, who's now at CBS, was there. Mike Florio, who's at NFL Network, was there.
Manzo, bro.
Corey Parson. We did a show with the Manzos. It was stacked. And Maria Marino, who was with SNY and now she's the Action Network. Mayo, Meany were up in Canada. Gary and Thorne was there. Like it was like the talent that we had there was amazing. Scott Angle, Adam Ronis, did Roto Experts in the morning. And then, just little by little, it just started kind of fading away. They built a studio and a restaurant in New York. Dave Martinez was there, Spitting Speeds, still my favorite guy. Ashley Docking, she's one of the best hosts I've ever worked with. Like, I mean, anyway, you keep naming them left and right, but yeah, man, it was fun. Like we had like a lot of people, and they all just kind of like one by one, everybody left, and now it's known as Sports Grid, and it's all betting, but. Fantasy Sports Network, man, like was good. Like we had Keith Bullock doing Sunday shows. He was awesome. We started the Keith Bullock show as a spring off of that. Like, he would just go for it for like an hour every Sunday. We put it out there. It was a really cool place with a lot of good people. So the Canadians, like you go up there, there's the office there. So I had to stay there we were doing shows for DraftKings, and I was there for like 4 or 5 days a week. They gave me, I had an apartment up in like Toronto for football season, basically. I'd fly in, go to work, sleep, repeat. But we'd be able to fly people in as guests for the show once a week. So like we'd have Salfino, Jake Seeley. Well, Jake worked for Fantasy Sports Network, Vaccaro came, Esser came, like, you'd have people come up for like 4 or 5 days, do the show, and then they go home. But it was just like a fun, when you start to get a little homesick, you're like, oh, Esser's coming on Monday. So that was cool. But yeah, it was a good experience, man. Len Aspert, he's gone on to, like, he's got the Fight Network. He bought HDNet from Mark Cuban and Access TV from Mark Cuban. So I think Steve Harvey's somehow on his board now. Like, it's cool. Like, he's still doing his thing. It's just fantasy got spun off into Sports Grid. He doesn't have much to do with it anymore.
Were you there during the period when Craig Carton came over for a few months?
Yeah, I was there. I was head of content during the Carton time. I mean, it's Carton. What you see is what you get, I guess. Behind the scenes, I would say he's very thoughtful with the staff.
Yeah, always
like he treated the staff really well. That was it, man. Like, you see him on screen and you're like, this guy. But then, like, you see, he comes down to the control room and he's like, hey, everyone, I brought you all some Chinese food. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, he's I don't know. Like, you could, you learn a little bit of something from everybody. From Carton, I think, like, some of these, guys in the control room, if they ever get on air or whatever, they ever get big, you remember that. Like, oh, this guy was great. He came down, he brought, you could do that. So, like, I think that was cool. Like, some teachable moments from Craig Carton there. Like, maybe I'm sure he wasn't, there's no ulterior motive. You're just being a nice guy, bringing people food.
Yeah. When I interned WFAN, he always got me and the staff breakfast, which was great. And last summer was playing softball with his son at South Beach in Staten Island. He brought the whole team Ralph's Ices. Surprised he's out the game, but he's a nice guy. Joe and him have a nice relationship as well. But yeah, it was a crazy time. But he came on the show, and Fantasy Sports Network was crazy back then. And now everything's all about the sports betting. So we'll touch more on that in a little bit. But how were you then approached to launch and manage the Athletics fantasy sports and betting verticals?
It was cool. Like, so my buddy Serge, he's Sergio Gonzalez, he's the NBA editor now, but we worked together at CBS down in Florida. We were buddies. They were starting fantasy, and he suggested me to the guy who was hiring for fantasy. And so I met with him. I had lunch with him. And I guess we hit it off, and he's like, all right, cool. Like, let's do it. So we built the staff. He already had a couple people he was bringing in anyway. I think Anita Marks and Jake Seeley were 2 people that he had, like, ready to sign up anyway outside of me. And then, we just started building, like, you start to think, like, how do you want to build a fantasy section? And, like, do especially when someone has to pay for, right? Like, you're going to be judging how many subscribers you bring in and how happy the subscribers are and if they renew and everything. And so you've got to think, like, I got to give you something that not everybody has. This can't be your typical, like, here's this stuff, all, everyone writing about, kind of like, here's my advice. So, Emery Hunt, one of my favorite people in the world, he's one of the first guys I asked. I'm like, you do something that's very unique and very smart and very deep and that I love. And so we got him to write a scouting column every week. David Ganos, one of the funniest guys I ever met in my life, and he just has a style. Brought him on. Chris Vaccaro, never written before, but is an NFFC Hall of Famer, won more money than, most everybody in the high stakes world. I'm like, just write it and we'll edit it. And he's like, yeah, sure. Okay. So, one by one, we just kind of brought on these people who we thought, as you go along and as you see, like, what this section is. Renee Miller, neuroscientist, talks about biases, how your brain can fool you. Like, after, you've done all this work, but there's this novelty bias where, like, this guy had, sticks in your mind because he's something new and shiny. And, you want to, it's like, we wanted to build something where it was just, like, really unique and really cool and a little bit different. But after you read it, you're like, that was really smart. Michael Salfino's like the king of that. So we put the group together, launched it. It did really well. Then we launched baseball. Same kind of idea. Like, who can we bring in who's going to be, like, a little different, worthy of your dollar? Baseball, you can't get as specialized, but now we have, like, Greg Jewett doing just relief pitchers. Al Melchior doing the waiver wire, like, stuff like that. Is we just kind of, like, it's not exactly specialized, but it's cool, smart stuff. Did fantasy hockey, brought Meanie back around. I knew him from fantasy. I'm like, come do the waiver wire column for us. And he did. And then Shayna, who was doing just regular stats for NHL, we read her stuff and we were like, this is fantasy, really. Like what you're writing is like a perfect fantasy column. And at first she was like, I don't know, but like I'll give it a try. And now she's won Fantasy Hockey Writer of the Year 2 years in a row. And then basketball, we're like, I don't know, like basketball is an odd one to try and figure out. We got this email randomly, I think like a year before, from Eric Wong, who's Roto Evil. And again, he's like, we saw how well Vaccaro did in terms of writing and people like loving it in the comments. And like for what Vaccaro is for NFFC, like, you know, he won a lot of money. He's a Hall of Famer. He's close to the top. Eric Wong is like the greatest fantasy basketball player in the entire universe. Like I don't think you can test that. Like he has won more than anyone. Like he's won more main events than anyone. And so we brought him in, but he was already a great writer. Like his stuff is amazing. I don't know how he hasn't won awards like left and right, but he's amazing. So brought him in, and basically like we just kind of follow the same thing every time we'd launch like a fantasy sport or whatever. It would just be like, who can we bring in? Who do we like? Like we're constantly on Reddit and Twitter looking for like new exciting writers and stuff, but who can we bring in that's just going to make someone like be like, yeah, that's worth it. So that's kind of how we built it. Me and Funston.
So I know you're always looking ahead here. Any thoughts so far? There were some reports that WWE is trying to make their fantasy sports betting legal. Have you thought ahead as to how you're going to do that vertical? I think Joe here is a great writer. He'd be excellent for that down the road.
No, we did like for WrestleMania this year, actually, the culture section runs it. I think we did like 15 wrestling columns right around WrestleMania. Like good, like we had some real like Richard Deitch wrote like Bobby the Brain Heenan story that was amazing. We did the player props. So for Super Bowl, our player props printout sheet that Funston did really well. We're like, why don't we just try that again for WrestleMania? That's like where people get together and watch it together with friends and stuff. So, you know, you get the idea of printing it out and whatever, did really well. I don't think we're going to do betting on wrestling, man. Like we've tried that a couple of years before. We tried it. Like, here are the odds. Here are our best bets. It didn't really hit. So if the audience isn't there, man, like I don't think we're going to fantasy wrestling. I don't think would hit. But yeah, betting. I don't know, man. I don't think either they don't want to come to the Athletic for it or they don't want it at all. I can't figure out which one it is, but either way, not good for us. No matter which way you slice it.
Logistically, I don't know how it's going to work. It's scripted entertainment. So I think from the get-go, people from the outside are looking in. Their first question is, how do you bet on wrestling, right? But at least like if you create a fantasy system, and I actually did this with my friend a couple years ago. We drew out like an entire system and a way of scoring and a way of like integrating it with certain shows, how the rosters are different, certain pay-per-views, certain match types and stuff like that, certain ways like matches finish, right? So you can draw up a fantasy system that works for wrestling, but betting on it, like I don't know if it'll ever gain any traction.
Look, they're smart. And I mean, they've proven to be smart over and over and over again. I'm sure they have a plan that's like well thought out and is, pretty airtight. So I'd love to see what it is. Like I've got faith that they have some pretty good ideas on how they can make it work. But even if it works, great. Still don't think people want advice on it, man. I think like if you're a wrestling fan, you just want to read about wrestling. Like you don't want to, I don't know who's going to read like here are this week's odds for Raw and our best bets. I don't know. I don't know if it'll hit.
No, I totally agree. And I think Nick agrees too. We're huge wrestling fans. So if there's anybody who you can go to for advice about that, or, we're always here.
I stopped WrestleMania 4, I think was my foray into wrestling.
It's gotten good recently.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, no, it's gotten real good the last couple of years. There's depth to the roster now. So if you ever want to throw it on a Monday or Friday, if you're home, again, you can come to Nick and we'll talk to you about that. Maybe get you back up to speed with it.
I got a lot to pick back up, man.
So you mentioned him before. One person in particular, our man Corey Parson.
Yeah.
Now, he is so funny. He's so different, unique to his own. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying.
Know what I'm saying? But ultimately, started doing shows with him at various networks. And at the beginning of this run here, most recently with Nick and I working for the Bettor Sports Network, we got to watch your show at the beginning there. So describe meeting him, getting to know him a little bit after meeting for him the first time and getting to work with him in that capacity.
So I met Corey through the Roto Experts in the morning. Like I was, man, I think I was working at CBS. It might've been before CBS actually. Anyway, so Roto Experts was out of 1221 Avenue of the Americas in the SiriusXM building. And since I was like, I'm in like, working in New York, living in Hoboken, I'm like, it's pretty easy for me to come in. Like they asked me to call in a bunch. I'm like, I can just come in if that's easier. Because I was doing, I forget what, like there was a public radio. I know this is like a little roundabout way, but I just want to give the full context. Anyway, offer to come in. And like I meet, Corey's a producer and I meet him, and like I had known Angle and Ronas for a while. And some of the best things about them are just the way you just pick them apart. Like, everyone's joking with everyone, but like just making fun of them is just so much fun. And the way Corey jumped in, I remember just like marveling at like just the way he got him, like just the things he picked up on, these little things. And like, I'm like, that's awesome. So the more I did it, the more, Corey's, let's hang out or whatever. So I think, I don't know, we just hit it off. And then when I came to Fantasy Sports Network, Tony Sincata and I did I think Roto Experts went from 6 to 9. We went from 9 to 10. And Corey was our producer. And I'm like, Corey's got to be like part of the show. Like I'm a producer, but like he's co-host basically. And so that was it. Like I'd come in, me and Corey were in the room hanging out. Tony was coming through a landline. But it was just like, it was awesome. Like it was, I mean, he's got timing, and he like, you can, I don't know, like if this sound, like, you can just see his brain. You can see the gears going like a split second ahead of everybody else. And that's what I think is what he does best. Like it's almost so like he's like just like sponging it in and living in this conversation you're having. And that allows him to like come up with some stuff that is just like some of the funniest stuff you'll ever hear. I'll tell anyone who listen, Ashley Docking, Corey Parson are the two best hosts I've ever worked with, right? Like they are, and Chris Meany's good too, but like these, like Corey Parson just like moves the show along and pushes the show in a direction that like either it needs to go in or he didn't realize it was going in, or I don't know, man. It's just like it's like what I imagine like Mozart's brain would work like when he's composing something. It's like Corey composes a show. But yeah, I would like anywhere anyone could catch Corey Parson like talking, just do it. I mean, I saw like Lincoln Center, we would where like the show would be the 9 to 10 show. It was over at 10, obviously. So, by the time we finish up, he does clips and it's 11 and we're like, let's go to a bar. Like we've been up since like 5, 4 in the morning. So let's, this is our 3:00. And we would just hang out for hours. It was just fun. And like, he's awesome, man. He's my favorite. The only reason I did this show was because it was with Corey. That's it. Like I didn't, don't have time in the day. Nick knows trying to get me on here. Like it's just like conflict all over the place. Like my calendar is like just constant blocks of meetings. But like, they're like, you can do the show with Corey. I'm like, yeah, I'm in 100%.
There you go. So something from your show and just all your time, and you mentioned a few times already here, is you're a big trading cards collector. So what's your favorite sport to collect cards for? And when did you start collecting cards?
I started when I was a kid, like everybody else. Like I think, got some packs when I was a little kid and it was just like cool. The first one I remember is 84, I think. 87 was like the iconic one. Again, man, like kind of like wrestling, you grow out of it a little bit. It gets to be too expensive. It's too hard to keep track of. I think I did just stop liking some of the designs. Anyway, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I feel like I'm a better non-sport collector than anything, actually. The last, like I just got in on this new Disney set that's out. Like this Disney Caca-Wow from China set that came out. I find it cool. You know what I mean? Like there are some chase cards you can get. Like it's all these iconic Disney characters. And I'm not like a Disney adult kind of thing, but it's kind of like, I can get a card of Dumbo. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, Garbage Pail Kids I love. Like the off the beaten path stuff, like the holiday packs. I was actually just digging around, pulling out this microphone because I haven't used it since I moved. And in the bag, I found like all these cards that I like jammed in there, I guess, when I was doing the show. And I found, I'm going to do this later. I found my 2 packs of Topps Holiday. And then I found this ridiculous card that I bought from Leaf. I don't even know why I did it. It's a pickleball player.
Oh,
I think she's like number 2, Catherine Parento. This card's worth like $100-something now. So, somehow. I don't know why. But anyway, like, yeah, just like doing regular baseball cards is fine. But like if you can get the holiday ones and have the holiday designs, I don't know why. My brain just works that way. I get a kick out of it.
Did you get into like Pokemon or Showdown cards at all back in the day?
Go there.
Never got into it. I was Pogs. Like I was too old for that. Like my little brothers and my little sister were into it, and I never got into it.
So I was going to ask you quick, now that everything in the digital sphere is, with the NFTs and stuff, and do actual physical cards still relatively retain value over time?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, like NFTs just kind of came and flamed out. Like I know, like I had some Topps ones that just are, pointless now. Like it seems like all the sets that showed up that were NFTs went away. Because I don't know, man. I think people just like holding them. They're like, if you look at it at a certain angle, it's like, oh, that's a beautiful picture. It's almost like a work of art. And then when you flip through them, and like I was flipping through things in a box, and like, man, I remember when I bought this one. Like, it was 10 years ago. I was doing this. I bought it because of that. I think they make for a nice trip down memory lane, help jog your memories a lot. You can't do that with the NFTs. Like, they're so spread out. I don't even know where, like, during that whole boom, I might have bought like 20 like NFTs, and like nothing crazy, like $10 each, whatever. But I don't know where they are. Like, I don't even remember what sites they're on at this point. So if I ever wanted to find them, I don't even know if I can consolidate them. They're just out there.
Right.
But I know all my stuff is in a box right now in a closet. So
they're floating through the internet space.
That's it, man. I mean, like I got like these Godzilla cards
right next to you.
Yeah, exactly. I can reach out and I can grab my Catherine Parento card and just be like, why did I buy this? But I did.
What is your favorite sport?
In terms of what, like playing, collecting, anything?
Anything, enjoying in general.
I don't know, man. I don't even know anymore. It used to be baseball. For a little while it was football. I was a big basketball fan, like in my teens. Because growing up in the Dome, like SU, like if you could take me back to SU, like the Dome, basketball, that was it. That was like when I loved it. Right now, I'd probably say baseball. I guess.
What are the pro teams that people root for up there in Syracuse?
Bills, Giants. I grew up a Giants fan. My father's from New Jersey, so I got into the all his stuff. But definitely the Yankees. Used to be the Blue Jays because we had their AAA team, but now we have the Mets AAA team. But I think a bunch of people are just on the Yankees anyway. Hockey, I have no idea. And basketball, I don't know if anyone cares. We used to have a pro team like in the 40s in Syracuse. I guess people are Knicks fans generally.
Well,
but yeah,
Carmelo Anthony fans. That's
right.
That's it.
The Jim Time and the Mellon Championship.
SU is our pro team basically, because football and basketball, they were always good. Go back 20 years when like they were both like the Paul Pasqualoni era, when they were just going like 9-2 every year. And obviously Boeheim was winning 20 games. So you had no reason. You didn't have to go to the pros. We had this SU that was just great, like, for 7 months of the year. So that was awesome. I miss it.
So without getting yourself in trouble here, do you think the sports betting and fantasy market is oversaturated right now? How do you kind of see things playing out? You've always been someone who can look ahead, because you can't listen to the radio, you can't watch TV, you can't look at anything online without seeing some sort of ad for a sports betting going on right now. My personal viewpoint is there's too many of them right now, and ultimately they're all going to merge together, and there's only going to be one or two top dogs left. But how do you see this playing out right now?
I think look, man, going back to history, this is DFS. This is like 2014 all over again. 2013, 2014. You had these companies with a ton of money, and everyone knows it's DraftKings and FanDuel, we talk DFS, but I mean, like, back then there were 11, 12, 30, fantasy aces. There were all these DFS companies bouncing around. And, eventually it all, the advertising dollars dried up when they got all the customers, when the customer acquisition spend was over. I think it's just it's cyclical, man. It's just gonna happen again. And you're right, like it's gonna kind of merge, dry up, whatever you want to call it, and you'll be left with like some behemoths. I don't know which ones are gonna win out. Like every day there's, you read Eliers and Krejcik. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but you get the email from them and like they have this report, like who's up, who's down this week, and it's someone different all the time. And they're testing apps and they're like, this app is better, out of nowhere. So I don't know how it's gonna go, actually. I don't know who's going to end up on top. But yeah, oversaturation. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who signs up for the $1,000 risk-free, take it. Oh, if I do this at this one and then I bet over at that one, then I'll fit it. I don't have the time for that. I just want to go somewhere that's easy to use on my phone, loads all the time, doesn't keep asking for my location. You know what I mean? And I found a couple that I'm comfortable with, and I hope they win and stick around, because I just like the ease of the app on my phone. If I just want to go put a 17 football parlay in, and it's very easy for me to hit the teams and then hit the bet slip, that's all I want, right? And so I think that like a lot of people are going to figure out, like, once the acquisition and the bonuses dry up, they're just going to go with, the best app. And whoever's going to, I would keep an eye on who has the best app, because I think that's going to win at the end of the day.
All right, definitely some good insight there, because a lot of these apps are popping up now, giving out these free plays and stuff. But when people win, like, they're not going to be able to pay them out at a certain point. The money's going to dry up. So we'll keep an eye on that. We appreciate your insight in there for sure. Now, in your life or your career, what would you say is your I'm right moment? So even by that, it's a time or place where you wanted to do something, you asked somebody for advice, they said, don't do that, that's an awful idea. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
Man, that's I don't want to throw anybody under the bus who told me I was wrong about stuff. So, here's an interesting one. We found a guy on Reddit. This is about when we launched the betting section. This is a recent one. I'm sure there's more. This guy on Reddit was like writing this really in-depth, really good dart stuff. Like amazing dart stuff. And you read it, and you're like, man, this guy's so deep and knows his darts. And so I watched for like a few weeks, and he was right. Like, he was winning. Like, he was very right about a lot of stuff. And so I'm like, I'd like to, obviously I would like some money in the budget to bring in this guy to write about darts. And they're like, come on, darts, really? I'm like, I think, like, we found, like, throughout our history, if there's a niche kind of thing, people will come because it doesn't get the coverage. Like, for trading cards, we write about trading cards, those stories do amazing because there aren't a lot of like places writing, smart, informative trading card stories. And so I'm like, I think darts do that. I think darts could do that. Like, especially like the person who's looking to bet on something, expert level, cut through the noise. Because when you read this guy's first 2 paragraphs, which is before you hit the paywall on The Athletic, really, you're like, this guy, I want to read, like, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. Like, throwing out nickname, Iceman, like all this stuff. So finally, like, it was just kind of like, go ahead. Here's some money, just go ahead. Let's see what happens. And his first column went nuts, like bananas. And so I think that was my, I'm right. Like, is that sometimes the niche, you fill that need, you're going to have people come, like, who have been underserved. You just got to pick the right one and the right person to do it. But I think, like, that's it's not always going to be football waiver wire. Like, you can max out on that. And like you said, it's oversaturated. Everyone's writing a football waiver wire. And we're lucky to have Jake because he's amazing at it. And he does it in a way that's different than anybody else. But if you start looking at the niche stuff that, could have an audience if done correctly, it works. And I think the darts one proved that. And so we had darts until the guy got too busy and couldn't do darts anymore. But I mean, like, we had a good run with darts.
Yeah,
how about that?
Yeah, I know, right? Based on all your previous work experiences, your research experience, you're always looking to find things that are interesting and intriguing. So, no, it makes perfect sense. You could totally see something like that, maybe with something else working for you guys in the future. I'm also into very interesting and intriguing things. And my last question before we let you go, Nando, is I'm into astrology.
All
so
right.
I always create a Rolodex of the astrology signs of all of our guests. Now I have to ask you what yours is, and do you think you relate to it in any way?
Yeah, I'm a Taurus. And it's actually weird. Like, so Ferdinand is Ferdinand the Bull. And it's, I guess I've been called stubborn and hard-headed. And I've been like, Bull has kind of followed me around. The theme pops up a lot in my life. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Tauruses like to eat too.
But there you go. Lee's Tavern.
There you go.
Nanner Bagels. Donut World.
How about a fantasy column where someone writes how their zodiac sign is going to impact their performance any given Sunday?
Let me tell you something. There's a woman named Andrea Malice. I believe her Twitter handle is Virgo in Service. We found her during Fantasyland when we were looking for like ways to, what's a way we can get an edge, whatever. She did charts for us on like 5 guys, but you have to get like really specific. Like I think you have to, for her, like you have to find like the time of birth.
Right.
She charted it out and did a read. So when I went to CBS, like, you know, they never had the video show. So we started the video show, and I'm like, I would like to get Andrea Malice on this show. She came on. She was awesome again. I don't know why we haven't used her at the Athletic yet. I think it's just like I keep forgetting, like when the season comes around, like, oh, we should get Andrea Malice. Like, come on, man, like as part of the draft kit. So check her out because she's a sports fan. She grew up, I think, in Queens, and now she lives out in the Bay area. So she's a Mets fan. She's a Giants fan. She does weekly appearances on someone's show. Anyway, it exists, and she's awesome. You should check her out. If you're really into it, like, you should check her out. Like, she's, even if it's just like to tweet some stuff at her and say, hey, you know, like, what you're doing is pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks like we gotta have her on.
Dude, you gotta have her on. She's
probably
fantastic. Yo, she's awesome. Like, she's a good guest. She's a wonderful person. Like, she's really sweet and nice. But like, again, you meet her and you're like, this woman is an expert in her field. Like, this is super deep knowledge here. So
Theoretically, all astrology is, in the most basic terms, is energy cycles. So if everybody is born at a different time, different place, right, has different energy cycles, life has ups, life has downs, correct? So based on where you play, what team you play for, the year it is, right, you'll either have good year or not so good year, right? So kind of flows the same way. Now, a lot of people aren't totally crazy about it, but I've never explained it like this on the podcast, so this is good for a future episode. Think of astrology as energy cycles.
Well, I mean, like, right, so like Joe Adele right now, we're doing the show, is going nuts, right? He's had like 6 homers in 6 games. She would tweet something like Joe Adele, Sagittarius, Uranus in transit, which means, you know, like whatever, you know, age 27, you know, Uranus in transit. So, you know, like something like whatever's happening, like with his chart, that is like, this is what's supposed to, you know, this is supposed to be happening. It's a time of major change for him, or like something like that.
It's great. Aries trining Sagittarius. I know all this crap.
But like, she will like I've retweeted a bunch of that stuff because I find it fascinating. Like, she's like, this guy's doing this right now, and here's the reason why astrologically. Like, no one does what she does. It's unique and she's smart. You know, I like that stuff.
Now we got to have her on, Nick.
You should hit her up. I bet she'd come on.
Awesome. Love that.
Tell her we're pals.
Yes, we will. We will, Nando. We will. Nando, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
I'm sorry it took so long. You know,
it's okay. Finally, we're able to pin you down, but we know you're a busy guy. We're going to get you going. But what we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share, if there's anything else you would like to promote, we've had so much fun with you. Hopefully we could do something again in the future, hopefully sometime in person. Maybe we go to Lee's Tavern, but anyway, like I said, you give the last words out. So if there's anything else you would like to say, by all means, go ahead. Thanks again. We appreciate it.
Invest in pickleball cards.
Okay. Have you played pickleball, Nando?
No.
No,
yeah. But I feel like I should. I feel like I'd be good at it.
It's very hard to get on the court, though, because they're always taken, but it is fun. I've played a few times. But
shame.
It's a shame. All right, Nando, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Nando Di Fino, for my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.